Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, whenever you might be catching us. I am super excited that you are here with us today for another amazing installment of the Richard Watkins Podcast, your go to source for conversations about innovation, health, education, and any and everything in between. Again, I am your humble host, Dr. Richard Watkins. The Richard Watkins Podcast is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network, your partners in a changing world as you prepare for tomorrow. SPAN are your partners today. Visit SPAN at span-inc.org. Now, with that out of the way, let's get the proceedings proceeding. We have an amazing guest with us today. We have Miss Ruby Sims, outpatient psychotherapist extraordinaire, Three Oaks Behavioral Health and Wellness, here to talk to us about everything under the sun in regards to mental health. But before we go any further, Ruby, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I am doing fabulous. It's a wonderful Wednesday morning. So I'm doing really great.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. See, the folks don't know why you're laughing, right? Because as we were getting ready for today's show, you mistakenly thought it was Monday. The weeks just fly, fly, fly by.
Wow. Yes.
So, Ruby, back me all the way up. How did Ruby Sims become Ruby Sims, the psychotherapist? Take me all the way back. I want to know a little bit. Like, there's going to be somebody watching who's going to be like, I want to be like Ruby Sims. And give them a blueprint. How did Ruby Sims become Ruby Sims, the psychotherapist?
Well, I haven't always been Ruby Sims, the psychotherapist, but I've always worked within the mental health field. Um, I actually started out, my background is in recreational therapy and group therapy, and I worked about 4 years at a psych hospital. And that was probably some of the most interesting times in my career, where I did a lot of group therapy work and different things like that. But even before then, I didn't imagine myself doing that type of specific work with group therapy. Before with recreational therapy, I wanted to integrate like sports into helping people who had like certain physical disabilities learn how to do sports and physical activities that they enjoy. And I just thought that that was like my thing, something that I was always going to do. But when I really got and dived into that field, I realized that it was a lot more interpersonal, where we interacted a little bit more on a group level. We talked, we had conversations, we did activities, and I did incorporate some types of physical activities and sports in that involved. But I realized that group therapy, it was starting to feel less and less interpersonal to me. And I'm like, I really want to meet people on a different type of level. I really wanted to meet people like on a very personal one-on-one. Let me really dive into your background and really discover what it is that you need to be successful and feel healed and strong and secure in your mental health. And so I was like, I got to go back to school. I gotta go back to school. I gotta like find a way to further my education so I can really be in that position to do that. And so I came across with my master's degrees in clinical mental health counseling. And so I came across that degree and I was like, you know what? This is exactly what I need to be doing right here, right now. And so I started to get into my program. I learned about all the different types of ways that I can integrate like mental health into people's lives and different things like that. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the one-on-one connection that I had with my clients and people that I interacted with when I was an intern. I just got so much experience with just how impactful this work can be. And so it just drove me to just continue and just foster my career and growth. And that's how I landed here as Ruby, the outpatient psychotherapist. So, yeah.
She mentioned we're here with Ruby Sims, outpatient psychotherapist. Now, where did you go to school? What were the names? Where did you go to school?
My undergrad degree is from East Carolina, go Pirates, and my graduate degree is from Liberty University.
Awesome, awesome. East Carolina, known for their Halloween celebrations. Hey, we're coming up Halloween here soon. All right, so what is an outpatient psychotherapist?
So, an outpatient psychotherapist is a person who sees clients or whatever language that people are using, clients, therapist, I mean, clients or patients or something like that, um, in a one-on-one setting, whether that be in an office or telehealth. And we meet for therapy once a week, bi-weekly, however much you're, where you are at in your mental health journey and what you're needing at that moment. And we meet with them for 53 minutes to an hour. And once we meet, we have our session, and then they are able to leave the office and go about their day and do their work. So, um, we see clients on an individual level in an outpatient setting. So they're only there for when they're there for their session and then they leave. And so my job consists of I work with individuals who are going through trauma mostly. That's kind of like my niche specialty. And depression, anxiety, attachment issues, which is another niche specialty that I enjoy as well, working in that type of room, as well as self-esteem and just self-love in general, especially with my Black women. I love really working with my Black women in that type of world as well too. So, just different types of work that encompasses like being an outpatient psychotherapist, because a lot of people see different types of individuals and have different types of specialties that they incorporate in their work just in that 53 to 60 minute of time each week. So, yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, can we break down like a few of those terms? We
Yeah.
hear them all the time, but I have the luxury, the honor, and privilege to have on a mental health professional. Um, I think I know the answer, but what is trauma?
Trauma, I would have to say, is an experience. And what I mean by that is everybody experiences something different, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's trauma, it's how they experience that situation. So trauma can be something as like small as I walked outside and I tripped and fell. That was traumatic for me. It's how someone experiences the situation that they go through. And so a lot of people hear the word like PTSD and different things like that. That is very like specific, kind of like I have a certain trauma that I have triggers behind and different things like that. But in the overall umbrella term of trauma, it is the experience that a person has that brings about sort of anxiety, feelings of like nervousness, feelings of like all those different things that you feel when you are triggered by something that was very harmful to yourself. So, yeah.
All right, two more words, and I'm not going to turn you into a glossary by any stretch, but I hear these terms all the time, and
Yeah.
I'm never provided with a working definition.
Yeah.
Um, And so you mentioned anxiety and you mentioned depression. I know you
Yeah.
mentioned a lot of other things. I want to talk about self-love as well. So we're going to talk about those three things here really quick. So let's start with self-love.
Mhm.
What is self-love and how does an individual recognize that they're not practicing self-love? How do they recognize that their self-love is in short supply? How do they recognize that?
A lot of things that I see when people come to me and they're kind of like, Ruby, like, I'm just having a real time with just thinking of myself highly, loving myself, different things like that. A lot of things that I see are people who are very burnt out on a day to day. They are maybe people pleasing. They are putting other people before themselves and really doing things at the the detriment of themselves, where they feel very burnt out and exhausted. The terms and the vocabulary that they use when they are talking about themselves, that's something that I really, really pay attention to, and something that is a big part of the interventions that I do with some of my clients that I'm working with self-care is how are we even speaking to ourselves on a day-to-day? Because one of the modalities that are very important to my work is called cognitive behavioral therapy. And what cognitive behavioral therapy is the ways that our language and our words and our thoughts influence our behaviors and our feelings. And so when we're talking about self-love, I always hear people use those terms of like, I don't think I'm this, I don't think I'm good enough for that, all those different ways like that. And if we take out what I call the CBT triangle, which thoughts, feelings, behavior, if we're thinking those things, we're going to feel those things. And if we feel those things, that's how we're going to behave. And so a lot of my work with self-love comes down to people, how are we even think? What are our thoughts saying to us? What are we thinking? And what are we saying to ourselves out loud? Because words are very powerful. And I know a lot of people say that, and that's very cliche to say, but it is very, very true when it comes to your mental health and just how you feel about yourself. And so when people are struggling with that, that is one of the things that I capitalize on the most is like, well, let's just think about our thoughts. Let's think about our words and our feelings and our vocabulary, because if we can meet it at the top with our thoughts, we can change those and we can change how we feel. And once we change how we feel, we can start to behave different. We can start to treat ourselves better. We can decrease the people pleasing. We can be able to foster a better way to have boundaries with other people so we can protect ourselves and feel a little bit better, because boundaries definitely teach other people how to be treated. So, yeah.
And I'm trying to think of a good segue to our next two terms, and that's anxiety and depression. But one thing that I wanted to know before we go over to there is narcissism a real thing?
I'm
I'm sorry for
laughing.
asking silly questions. I don't know. I'm just asking.
It's
Is that
not a
like a
silly question.
is it
It's not a silly question, but it's very fun. I laugh because like I hear that a lot from people. Like I think that's like the buzzword now. Like I feel like narcissism and like gaslighting is like the buzzword that everybody is using now. And that's no that's no like shade or anything to you, but it's like a very common thing that we hear as therapists, where when somebody is like describing a situation or something like that, they include that. Not to say that that's not a real word or a real term, because it is a real like disorder, but it is like a very much buzzword that I feel like sometimes people may overuse or not really dive into like what that actually is and how that applies to their specific situation. So yeah.
yeah, isn't it like related to like a Greek tragedy of somebody who falls in love with their own face reflection in the water? And they want to be with themselves so much that they accidentally drown trying to be with their own reflection. I think it's rooted in that. So I think what I was asking is because I don't understand the word, I was wondering how do we balance, when does self-love become narcissism, or can self-love, true self-love can never become narcissism. Can it or can it not? Are they? I don't know. Do you know?
I
You get what I'm asking? When do you cross
I
that
know.
line?
Absolutely. I think the difference is like with narcissism, it's a very specific heightened sense of self that can be very harmful to other people. And when we think about self-love, I think the difference is with self-love, you are setting up boundaries with people who are kind of taken away from you and really draining you or different things like that. I would have to say when it comes to the social context. And for like intrinsically and internally, I feel like narcissism has like a different type of way that people show up in a setting, and that can look like how they treat other people, how they like what the things that they say about themselves when they're referring to themselves. I feel like there's a difference in that type of language as well, where like self-love, you're really just in the business of really protecting your peace and just making sure that when you are interacting with people, you're doing it in a way that feels genuine to yourself, as opposed to like, I'm doing this because I want to assert some type of power or dominance over you, because that's sometimes what narcissism kind of displays with individuals.
Oof, man, you really unpacked that. Like, thank you so much. All right, so anxiety and depression, what are those two terms, and are they related ever? Yeah, unpack those two terms for me.
Yeah, anxiety and depression can be very much interchangeable. I would have to say with anxiety specifically, it is sort of like excessive worry, and also goes back to like your thoughts as well too. That's why I think CBT is a very important modality when it comes to addressing some of these issues, because a lot of people are not kind to themselves in their mind. And I always tell people that if you're going to be in your head, you got to make it a nice place to be. So it's like, I feel like when anxiety, sometimes the thoughts overpower how we feel, and then that leads to excessive worry, that leads to like just unable to control like these different thoughts and worries and things like that. And with depression, that's a mood disorder. So that also affects how we feel and how we behave. A lot of times depression isn't something that we experience in the external world. It can be something that we experience internally. There can be chemical imbalances in the brain that really make it hard for our happy hormones to be where we need them to be. And that can lead to depression and different things like that. So, most people who have depression and experience it in a very intense way are on medication. Same with anxiety as well too, along with therapy, which is another thing that I think a lot of people have a hard time grappling with. It's like, well, I'm on medication and I don't need therapy. But like being on medication is not going to be the only thing that helps you get to where you need to be. You need therapy along with medication to really teach you the tools and stuff to survive and be like happy and secure. So, yeah, anxiety and depression can be used interchangeably, because I think sometimes people experience both. And I think depression definitely affects a lot of people more than they know. A lot of people are high functioning with anxiety or high functioning with depression, and that means that like they are displaying the symptoms but have learned to maybe distract or like work through it in a way that may feel a little bit unhealthy, that can lead to burnout and all those different things. So, yeah.
So the people don't know that they're working through depression or working through anxiety, as you stated, and I believe the term you said, high functioning.
Yeah.
Um, and you said they're displaying some of the symptoms, but perhaps maybe they don't recognize it. If somebody is listening, right now,
Yeah.
what things could they look out for, or what things, or what symptoms may they be displaying that I guess they could recognize within themselves, like, oh, wait, I do experience some of those. Maybe I need to seek, a mental health professional. Maybe I need to seek services or resources to better my mental health. What are some of the things that folks can look out for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think irritability. If you find yourself with a short fuse, even when you don't intentionally mean to be short fuse, like that can be a sign that you are maybe super anxious about something or worried, or maybe even not in the best mood. I would have to say tiredness. If you hear a lot of people, um, sometimes I hear people come in and say, "Yeah, I'm just really tired, not having been able to sleep," and different things like that. And I'm just like, maybe we need to look at why those things are happening. Like, are we practicing like how to be active during our day to foster a better mood that's not leading to our tiredness and different things like that. So I have to say tiredness, irritability. not being able to have the capacity or tolerance for just like normal, maybe everyday activities. So like stuff that like felt easier for you before may feel a little bit difficult as like you're trying to muster through the phase of your life that you're in. So like having like less capacity to take on certain tasks, not being able to be focused, that can show that you're maybe preoccupied with something in your mind or your brain, something that may be worrying you. There are also a lot of physiologically like symptoms like sweating, shakiness. A lot of people have like restless legs. They don't even pay attention to that. I'm guilty of like clenching my jaw. So like if I feel myself clenching, I'm like, okay, wait, I'm like preoccupied with something in my head. I need to kind of like bring awareness to that, release that, and like kind of pay more attention to how I am like treating my body during this moment. So like there are a lot of physiological symptoms as well too. So yeah.
And do you think over time, have things gotten worse or better for mental health? On one hand, you're grappling with the digital age, being online, social media,
Mhm.
but on the other hand, it feels like mental health is being more widely supported.
Yeah.
And more people, it seems, know about it, or at least are thinking about it, or seeking out their own Ruby Sims for support.
Yeah.
What do you think? And since you've been in it and studying it, are we better in regards to mental health than we were, or are we worse?
I feel like I feel like it's more widely accepted. I feel like it's less taboo. Um, I think a work in progress would probably be in marginalized communities and underserved populations because um, there's one, a certain level of disparity there where many people don't have access to mental health care. Um, and therefore, they don't see it as something that is probably worth going after if they don't have a way to get to it. So I think is more accepted and is widely um, talked about a lot more. But I think more accessibility to it in underserved and marginalized populations will probably help further the agenda of making sure that people are getting adequate care for their mental health and different things that they're going through. So I think we're on the up and up. I feel good about it. But there is still so much more work to do with it. With making sure that people can see the value in it because if you're coming from, as a Black woman, coming from a place where that's not taught, it wasn't talked about a whole lot growing up, and I'm pretty sure that there may be other experiences that are like that too in maybe the Black community or other types of BIPOC communities. And so if it's not talked about, if it's not shown any value to, then a lot of people are not going to want to seek after it and know the value that it can bring when people are going through things. So I think more education around it is prompted. I think more conversation like these, like we're having on this podcast, to be shown to other people to know about it and learn about these things, is prompted. So yeah.
Ruby Sims here, outpatient psychotherapist, Three Oaks Behavioral Health and Wellness. Ruby, I've heard you mention a few times, and I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of make space for you to kind of talk about something that I've heard a few times, the intersection of mental health, and then the identity of Black woman.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about, why that intersection is unique and what folks need to know about that, whether you identify yourself as a Black woman or you don't. Why is that intersection so important, that concept of identity and then mental health?
That's a really great question. Representation is definitely pivotal in this type of work. Um, a lot of people who identify as maybe a Black woman or a Black individual may have a hard time seeking out therapy if all they are seeing are people who may not look like them. And that's just being truthful in a way that I've seen where people I've come to sessions with some of my Black individuals, and it's like, I'm really glad that I got connected with you because I just feel like you will understand me a little bit more because we share the same types of identities and maybe even the same types of background and struggles that maybe we have went through, and you can understand me on that type of level. And I think that is a great way to be connected and build that rapport with your clients where they can feel safe and comfortable. And the intersectionality of those two really matter when it comes to that, because a lot of people can get into sessions and like go through different therapists and not feel connected, not think they're a good fit because of that one simple fact. And so I think that really matters a whole lot when it comes to like intersecting those two and being like having that representation. So, yeah.
Sorry, I clicked on unmute like 4 times. I don't know if I was supposed to talk then. I think that was something telling me, no, don't talk. Let that moment sit. I actually want to also kind of talk about that the mental health aspect of the identity of being both black and a woman,
Yeah.
because I could imagine that experience um, having a unique impact on mental health. Right, one is being a black person, which carries with it a whole set of unique experiences. Now, not every black experience is the same, but there is a uniqueness to, being black. And then there's that aspect of being a woman on top of that. That intersection, how is that mental health scenario unique? Could you talk a little bit about that if you feel comfortable?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many different experiences that people come to therapy with, that really signifies the uniqueness of that intersectionality, because I don't know if I don't know what my experience as a therapist would be with Black people if I was not a Black individual. I would imagine it would feel different than having the same experience, or being related to some sort of experience that someone comes to therapy with. Um, I run a consult group at at the practice that I work at. It's called Clinicians of Color. And during that consult group, it is a very pivotal way for individuals of color that work at this practice to come and connect and commune, and one, talk about the experiences of their sessions and their clients, and then two, also gain support and validation for like, maybe sometimes this work can be hard as being Black and also being a Black woman, because like a lot of times we're seen as less than, uneducated, not, not knowing what we're doing, not all those different things that you hear and people name out in the world. And so it is important to have that space that I created within the practice to be able to um, kind of like dismiss some of those thoughts and feelings and imposter syndrome that people may feel when it comes to this type of work. And so I just think it's very important because these experiences, they bring about a way that people can connect, that maybe they don't normally have just out in the world, just where they are. So, yeah.
You dropped another one, imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome?
Um, and my definition of imposter syndrome, I have to say it is when people who know that they are qualified and who know that they have the education and the degree, and they'll get into a place where that is put to the test and feel like they can't measure up, or don't feel like they have what it takes, or don't feel like they are made for the position or the place that they are at. Um, you see it a lot with new clinicians. I see it a lot with um, people who are just now learning the field and understanding what the field is. They feel like this, like maybe they won't be able to really help someone. And then they start getting into the field and they learn more and they practice and realize, oh, wait, like I can't actually do this work. So, yeah, I think it falls under another term of self-love of like, how are you treating yourself and what are you saying about yourself that is really leading to these behaviors and these feelings? And imposter syndrome can come out of that as well, too. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with imposter syndrome. I think with the podcast, I'm always like, well, how will I ask the right questions? And no matter how many episodes I do, I think like I'm not going to be able to do this. My questions are going to sound ridiculous. Ruby is going to laugh at me, and I worry about that. But that I think that's a perfect transition to another segment of the podcast, and I do this with everyone. So I have, like I said, the honor and the privilege to talk to the most brilliant people, in the world, right? And you're obviously, one of those people. So, thank you so much for your service, your commitment to, society, community. But, thank you for coming on to the Richard Watkins podcast. I end up kicking myself at the end of every single interview because I've got this amazing individual that I have an opportunity to talk to, and I could have asked them this question or I could have asked them that question, and the podcast is over with, and I'm like, I should have asked that follow up. And they probably were prepared to talk about something that I didn't even ask them. And so, out of that fear, and out of anticipation of that, I want to ask you a question that I ask everyone. What question should I have asked? Right? Ask that question, and we're gonna talk about it for a second.
Okay.
Does that sound all right? I know I didn't. I know I didn't prepare you for that. Um,
Okay.
all right, cool, cool, cool. What question should I have asked?
Um, wow, I feel like you did a really great job of picking up on some of the um mental health terms and allow me to expound on them. I think that was really great. Wow, I've never been asked this question. That's very that's very interesting. I've been on like panels, I've done like presentations and different things like that, and I've never been asked this question. Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on it.
Let's pivot a little bit. What do you want to talk about? We can talk about anything under the sun as far as mental health. When you get on the panel, I know what a panel's like, at least me. I always want to be the best panelist. And even I'm just being real, I get jealous if a panelist has more questions than I do. I'm like, nah, nah. Or if an audience member stands up like, this question is for another person. I'm like, no, I'm the best person to answer that question. So I'm really competitive. But when you look at like the news and when you look at, popular culture, are you like as a mental health provider, are you looking at it with a different lens? Like, see, now that person needs some help. Like, I don't know. How are you approaching it? What is
Man.
Okay, I must be talking about something. You must watch other people's podcasts and be like, that person, that person needs to talk to me. Or so I don't know.
That's so funny because like we live in such a social digital world that I'm just like, if people spend less time like creating their world and lives online and looking for the validation to there, they would probably be a little less anxious or maybe a little less like triggered by certain things or self-esteem may look a little bit different. But I just feel like social media has been a part of the detriment to a lot of people's like psyche and how they feel about themselves and different things like that. So yeah, I would have to agree. And that just brings up something about your question you asked me before about like what you should have asked. And one of the things that I had mentioned before was about attachment theory. And that is one of the things that I really, really enjoy to incorporate in my work because attachment theory talks about how people's childhood experiences and their parenting and the love and the care and attention they receive from their parents and just how their childhood and emotions were taken care of when they were younger influences how they are as adults in social situations, in relationships, and how they just interact with the world in general. And it's very, very interesting because a lot of the times when I'm maybe taking on a new client or something like that, I really, really, really like to dive into their childhood and just talk about their parents, their siblings, like birth order. That has a whole lot to do with like how you feel and how you show up as well too. And so like
Wait, how does a middle child show up?
are you the middle child?
Hey, come on, man. It's not about me. I'm just asking in general. You know what I'm saying? There might be a middle child out there. You know what I'm saying? Yes, I am a
Are
middle
you the?
child.
I think
Okay. Yes, I
it's
am.
giving. Yeah, it's giving middle child. That's how you mentioned that. I would have to say the middle child with parents, they are they are a little bit more in the know of what to do when it comes to a child because you know when you have your first child, the firstborn, they sometimes parents have no clue how to be a parent then. So they're just kind of pulling stuff and trying to figure it out. And then when it comes to the middle child, they're more so like, okay, I've had a child before. I kind of know what to do. I'm a little bit more equipped to handle this child. I may not even really pay much attention or worry about them as much as I used to do. I won't be as worried because I kind of got another child under my belt beforehand. And so that's what happens when it comes to middle child. You know, that helps you out a little bit there.
Right. I'm sorry. Sorry to make it about me. I mean, that must be the middle child in me or something. Just like, hey, I need attention. You know what I'm saying? But you were talking more about attachment theory, and then I kind of took you off course. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. But yeah, I use that a lot in my work because I really like to dive into how people's childhood has now influenced how they show up as adults. And I think that's very important to recognize. And once people recognize it and understand it, they're more aware of their behaviors and why they do the things that they do because I hear that a lot of times in my sessions where people will come in and say like I just don't understand why I'm this way. I just don't understand why I think this way. I just don't understand why I feel so anxious or why I feel so insecure in my relationships. And I'm like, well, let's talk about like how you were taken care of, how your emotions and things like that were taken care of when you were a child, because maybe that is how you were kind of conditioned and taught that this is how love is, or this is how like care is supposed to be, or this is the absence of this or that. So I think that really helps people understand, like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I understand that now. And then we can start to work on building a more secure attachment by setting boundaries, by increasing their self-love, by working on their anxiety symptoms and their thoughts and behaviors and different things like that.
What's the difference between mental health and psychology? Is there a difference? Are those terms synonyms of one another? Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. I would have to say like psychology is like the umbrella, because psychology has like a widespread of different things that it encompasses and I think it's just like the behavior of people's minds, thoughts, feelings, and all those different things like that. And I think mental health falls underneath that because mental health is a part of our the way our brain works and how we behave and the study of that. So yeah, I think you can use those interchangeably in a way.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I guess just finishing up, I wanted to kind of go back to social media. I think one of the things that I think are interesting about social media, and I wonder if you know of a practice that involves this. Social media knows more about us than we care to admit, about our own selves, right? How much we really like videos of glass jars rolling down steps, right?
Oh,
Or how much we really like videos of hydraulic presses crushing items, right? How much we won't really admit that. So I wanted to know what would be the benefit of when you sit down and you talk to somebody, if you're like, give me your phone, and he grabbed their phone and opened up I don't know, their social media app, right? The TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I'm probably leaving out something. And you open it up, and I guess under like HIPAA protections, right? Or I don't know what the rules are. It's like a safe space, right? What do you think you would be able to glean from someone if you grab their phone and started browsing, not looking up the person on your phone, but grabbing their phone where that algorithm has been really tailor fitted to that person. What insight do you think, as a mental health provider, you could gain from like looking at what somebody interacts with on social media?
I would probably say their interest, one. Like maybe the things that they are into of like maybe celebrities, sports, different types of like hobbies or activities that they enjoy. You can kind of glean that from social media. You can kind of glean like people that they're interested in. Sometimes if it's a single individual, somebody that's not in a relationship, if they like a certain type of a person, whatever gender or sexual orientation, like you could probably glean from that as well too, because of like the things that they may be more interested in looking into. Um, you could probably glean how much time they spend up there. And I say that because your phone can tell you how much time you spend on social media. And so you could probably see like just how many maybe apps they have and stuff like that of like how much they spend, how much time they spend up there. You can probably glean from that. I will also say maybe what kind of music and different things they're into. I think that also tells a story because that lets me know like, okay, they enjoy hip hop, they enjoy R&B, they enjoy rock music, whatever. Like you can probably glean from those type of things. Maybe they follow certain artists and just have that on their like side of things. So yeah, you can probably glean a lot of stuff from if I were to take a client's phone and like scroll through their social media, I could probably see a lot of things.
I'd probably be embarrassed. And while we were here, while we were asking that question, I was like, I wonder what the first video that'll pop up if I open up TikTok. And it was from the Cam Newton podcast. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it tells you that I like football, which I do. Cam Newton is one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time, which he is. And then also, I'm a podcaster. So there we go. And maybe just change the mental health profession right here and there. Ruby, listen, thank you so much for being here on the Richard Watkins podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure and privilege to talk about self-love, how identity intersects with mental health, how you can appreciate whether or not you are dealing with the symptoms of anxiety or depression. What else do we talk about? Social media. And we also talked, wait, did we talk about what an outpatient psychotherapist even is? We
Yes.
defined that. Okay, great, great. Because I didn't have a check on my checklist. I was like, oh no, I didn't do that. And we also talked about what was it, imposter syndrome as well. So we covered a lot of things. We might have to have you again on another episode of the Richard Watkins podcast because we just scratched the surface as far as mental health. For folks out there who are looking to gain more information about you or about mental health, do you have any websites, any links, any resources that you could recommend?
Yeah, well, of course, if you are seeking services or in need of wanting to be connected to a mental health professional or therapist, you can go to my company's website at Three Oaks Behavioral Health and Wellness. We are in the Raleigh-Wade County area, and we service people all around the area. We have about 10 different offices, over 100 different clinicians who have various backgrounds and different modalities and things that they can offer. And if you go to our website, you can be able to go there and look through all the different therapists and read their bios and choose which one you think would be the best fit. You can also follow me on social media. My social media page for mental health is called the Self Care Corner. So you can find me up there. I have different videos and stuff where I talk about mental health and different things like that. You can also follow Three Oaks on social media as well to see what we're up to, see the different therapists, and look at some of our different materials up there as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So hopefully you all had a pen and pad in hand and you were able to grab all of those resources. Your mental health is health, right? And health is wealth. So making sure that you're staying on top of all the information that you need and knowing how to take better care of yourself is, I guess, an important step in regards to self-love and self-upkeep. So again, Ruby Sims, thank you so much. Ruby Sims, outpatient psychotherapist, Three Oaks Behavioral Health and Wellness. This has been another episode of the Richard Watkins Podcast. Again, the Richard Watkins Podcast is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network, or SPAN. And remember that the future is not something to wait for, it's something to build. Until next time, take care.